Welcome to our second Future Forum, a downtown for all, exploring community gathering spaces. And we're really excited. This is our second one. How many folks went to the first one? All right, so maybe half of us, which was at the library. It was a great turnout. These, honestly, I was like, I don't know who's really going to come to this, but then it got sold out. So with food and free, I think we have a good combination for selling out. Right? But the topic is really great, and we're really excited to have our guests here, have a nice interactive exercise. So hopefully you didn't come and just thought you were going to sit here and listen, because we actually need your brains tonight to help us out. So we'll get going on this presentation here. We're going to keep this pretty quick, so we can get to our speakers and our activity. But I want to thank you again for coming, all of you. We have some city council members here. We have some commissioners here. We have city staff who really helped out with this. We have our consultant that really helped out with this, our DSMA president, chamber folks, and everyone else. So just thank you for coming. You know, where we've been, what part of the process is this tonight? The San Mateo opportunity that we have in front of us, and then we'll hand it over to our guests for the presentation activity. Just a quick check. Like I said, we try to get out of here at 7:30, but because we're starting a little late, we might go a little bit over, maybe 7:45, but if you need to take off, feel free. But we just want to make sure we get the most out of this important topic tonight. Why we're here, I talked about this at the last forum, but really, you know, our landscape is changing. The city ourselves had a funding tool called redevelopment, which helped us invest in the downtown and do different things. We don't have that anymore, so we're out there. You know, I might have to come around and check your pocketbooks and see if you can help us out to do some things we want to do. But our landscape, our internal landscape, is changing as far as how we're able to do things within the city. So we're looking for opportunities to change that and find new ways to invest in our downtown. But also, you know, downtown is changing as a place. It's more and more valuable here in the peninsula. I've said it before, there's like a 1.8% vacancy in our downtown. So people want to be here, and you can see that by all of our spaces being taken up. And even some of our old vacant spaces, like right down the street here at the Blue and White Laundry. I'm sure someone can guess how long that has been vacant. Almost as old as me, which is only 25. But, you know, that's going to be redeveloped. 333 South B Street, which is our old Rite Aid, that's being looked at and being renovated. A lot of our nooks and crannies of our downtown are all being renovated and invested in. So things are changing, and many of us came today and we walked. Why did we walk? Because, not just because it's good for us, because there's probably not too many parking spaces. So that's a reality of our downtown. So what do we do about that? One of our next future forums is going to really talk about how downtowns are dealing with parking and transportation. And so anyway, these future forums and our whole engagement process around the downtown, which we'll talk about more, is really to learn what people are doing from best practices like our presenters are going to talk about tonight. What are other places doing in cities like ours? And also, you know, just sometimes we just look at what San Bruno's doing or what Burlingame's doing or what Redwood City's doing, but this is an opportunity to really look around the world, around the nation about best practices around city planning, land use, design, those kind of things. And so we're here to learn. And opportunity to frame planning. As you'll see in the next slide, we're moving into more of a formal downtown area plan update, which is a policy and design activity guide that's updated every so often. And a lot of this information is being captured and will be put into that plan. So this is kind of like a soft opening to that formal plan. And all of us here are able to frame that plan with our ideas and thoughts. So this kind of, this is part of an overall downtown engagement strategy, which started back in September of 2014 with our stakeholders forum and commissioner summit, where we said, you know what, let's really focus on the downtown and think about our downtown in a different way. What's to come? And so we started that time off, and since then, we've had, well, we had tonight, we had our first feature forum, and we have the next two, but we also have had pop-up workshops, and different things to really get people's ideas about the downtown, how we frame the conversation for the formal plan. And all of this information goes into our downtown area plan update. So this is the process stuff. And just to let you know that all of your thoughts and ideas are captured within this process period. This is kind of a visual process, and it's up on the board, so I won't make you break out your binoculars to see them. These are some pictures of some of the great things that we've done, and already at the bike rodeo and the Christmas on North B and the different kind of activities we've had have really been good at getting some input, and it's all up on our website. And actually, this is being filmed, hello, which will be on our website whenever we get, oh, hello. When we're done with it, it'll be up on the website, just like the first one is up there now, so you're welcome to check those out. A lot of different ideas have come up from these forums, from public art to rooftop gardens to traffic being an issue, to variety, to walking districts, to one of our council members, I won't say who it is, but maybe close down B Street and just make it a pedestrian walkway.
That's a good idea.
What? That's Joe Goethals, by the way. He's a council member. And you're not running for a re-election right now or anything. Okay. But just different ideas. But a lot of people share those ideas about how to make our downtown different and accessible, walkable, sustainable. These are the pictures of our fine council members. And you know, one of the things they would like to do is to activate spaces in our downtown. And that's something that, if you think about downtowns, you think about it as a commercial district, but really it's so much more. And so they're challenged the staff, city manager's office to say, hey, how can we activate some spaces that are maybe underutilized? And so what's great about this process is actually we're in a building that I don't think we've ever used before. So, and it's right off of our downtown, so it's a special night tonight even. But tonight we're going to be challenged to think about more of our spaces and what to do with them. Those are good pictures, by the way. You look good. And you know, we've experimented and done things and programmed things within the city already around activating spaces. Top left corner, you can't really see that well, but that's called Off the Grid. And Off the Grid is a food truck event. Some people, you know, I've lost hair for different reasons. This is another reason why I've lost them, because we wanted to pilot that on, I think, Monday nights when it was a slow night. But, you know, it's more food where there's a lot of brick and mortar restaurants. Probably, I don't know, Sonny, you weren't here before, so I didn't ask you if you liked it or not. But a lot of people didn't really love it, but it brought people downtown when it wasn't really activated. And that's what we want to try to do, is find opportunities to do that. But sometimes you got to take a risk. But the way we did it, it was a good way to do it. On the right, top right, is tree lighting ceremony. We do that during the Christmas time. Bottom right, Central Park Music Series. Some of you, I see you up there dancing. You're ready already for the summer. In the bottom left is actually our San Mateo Happiness Wall. And who's seen it? All right. So that was a great exercise. It started there at Summerfest. It actually started a year before that. But people came and drew what their representations of happiness were. And now it's right at 3rd and El Camino, where there's 3 vacant sites. And we're trying to say, how can we beautify these sites? And one way you can do it is through art. So that's there, and that's through collaboration. And it turned out great. So we've kind of little by little tried to address particular spaces that are underutilized and activate them. But there's a lot more that we can do. And so as we put our thinking caps on in our exercise, and when we're all thinking, think about your places in the downtown, the physical places. Another one of the questions was, what's your favorite place? And sometimes it's with family or with others in the downtown. So place is kind of what you make out of it. But thinking about the physical place, there's some opportunities that, like I think about the, I don't just think about it, others do too, about the theater. It's just kind of underutilized. the plaza in front. Main Street, it's really neat, but you can probably maybe do some things there. Parking lots, they're not used all the time. And we're going to think about some of those spaces, and those are just physical, but we can think of other things too as you guys lead us through that exercise. But this is a time where we get your thoughts, and there's a lot of things that people have in their mind about how to activate spaces, and we'll think about some of those tonight. So as I hand it off to our presenters, Julie Flynn comes from the Streets Plans Collaborative, and actually based in Miami. I know you have an office in New York and San Francisco, and you run the office in San Francisco, and has done a lot of good things around the space. Honestly, I didn't even know that there are design firms or people who activate spaces, but there are, and you've done some great work around it, particularly around organizing communities to, I don't even want to say this, but to put pressure on local government to make something happen. And I think you call that tactical urbanism, okay?
Yeah, we'll go into more.
I know you're gonna, but you know what? You don't have to do that here, okay? Because we're all.
You'll see.
Just kidding. But we're excited you're here, not about just what you do, but how you do it. Okay, so we're excited to hear about that. And Leah Nichols from SiteLab Urban Studio, also in San Francisco, has done great work and has seen things and done things around the world and implemented great projects around the country. So excited to have you here too, Leah, and we're excited to hand it off and let you guys take it from here.
My name's Julie Flynn, and I work at the Street Plans Collaborative, and then Leah will speak after me, but I'm going to go first to a few slides here. So first of all, it's good to be here. I'm really excited to be in downtown San Mateo today. A little bit about our company. So we're an urban design and urban planning firm, but we do a lot of research and advocacy as well, and tactical urbanism, which Marcus mentioned is one of the main topics we've done a lot of research about. So that's what I'll be talking about today. But I do really have a background in planning and activation in general, so that really bleeds into our work. On your way in, you got a handy name tag, and you were asked to write down one of your favorite places in San Mateo. So right off the bat, I'm going to make you guys do some talking, and I thought I would just ask one or two brave volunteers to tell the group what place you wrote on your name tag.
Central Park.
Central Park. Can you tell me why? Just in a few words.
Oh, well, it's just very peaceful.
Peaceful? She's saying peaceful. Did anybody else write Central Park? Okay, yeah, Central Park is a popular one. Is there another one maybe someone would like to share?
Historic district,
The Historic District. Tell us a couple things. Why'd you write that down?
beautiful old buildings that symbolize the character.
Great. Did anybody else have the Historic District? Another one? I'll ask for one more. Anybody else? Something's maybe a little different? Way in the back. Say it again? Ah, okay. Any other takers on that one? No? Okay, great. Well, it's nice to hear from you right off the bat about some of the great spaces in San Mateo. And I've seen people's name tags, they're not all public spaces. Some of them are, bars or restaurants. Some of them are even people's homes. And I just think it's important, my own home or a neighbor's home. But it's important just to note that, public space, it's obviously very important to our cities. It's important to our health, our physical health, our environmental, economic health as communities, but it's also just part of what makes us happy and alive. That photo sums that up to me. But I also just like to remind people that our public space archetypes, parks, plazas, yes, but also streets. And streets are definitely, really important parts of our public spaces, and a lot of cities are doing creative things with their streets now more than ever. So tactical urbanism, Marcus mentioned this, and I'm just going to dig right into it. Who's heard of tactical urbanism before? Okay, so some people know the term. This is our working definition, which we've developed after researching this quite a lot, but could definitely go by other names: DIY urbanism, urban prototyping, planning by doing. But the definition is a city and or citizen-led approach to neighborhood building using short-term, low-cost, and scalable interventions, but this part is important, that are intended to catalyze long-term change. So the idea is that you're taking an iterative approach to something, well, you have a longer vision for transforming a community. I'm going to walk you through a case study that I worked on recently in Morgan Hill, California, to illustrate this concept. So Morgan Hill, how many people know Morgan Hill or have been to it? A lot of people have. Okay, great. So you maybe know Monterey Road. It's the main commercial corridor in downtown Morgan Hill, 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, lots of great restaurants. And one of the things that the community is really proud of and really loves is the vibrant culture of downtown dining and just vibrancy on weekend nights. Even though it's only 4 or 5 blocks, it's really a destination. So the Downtown Association was really interested in fostering a more pedestrian, cyclist, general people-friendly environment downtown. And you see there's a median in the middle of that road, but it's not really a public space, it's just a big mound. And it is quite a wide road at the same time. So they engaged in a complete streets planning process led by an engineering firm, Harris & Associates, and also Alta Planning and Design. They're pretty known in the region for doing a lot of bike and ped work. So they were leading this complete streets planning effort, and that whole process led to 2 alternatives. One of them you see here, which was using one of the travel lanes and reappropriating it to be expanded sidewalk space. So here, there's more room for outdoor dining. You've got a little bike corral area, and cyclists would be sharing the lane with cars. So that's one alternative. Second alternative was to do a buffered bicycle lane. This would be no expansion of the sidewalk space, but cyclists would have a protected, buffered area to ride. Both of these alternatives are pretty dramatic changes to the roadway. Because of the way the street's engineered, you can't totally see it, but you actually wouldn't be taking away much parking because the parking there's bulb outs and the parking is even closer to the curb, but you would be taking away a lane for vehicle travel in either directions, which is a big deal. So the Downtown Association was very supportive of this idea, but not everybody in the community was ready to just go for it, and they decided to take a tactical urbanism approach to the project. So that's where I came in, and this is a site plan sketch which I want to show you because it's not a very snazzy drawing. It was done in Google Maps and by someone on the project committee, but it illustrates the point that you don't have to be an expert. You could be on a downtown association and draw up this sketch, but you get the plan across, you get the idea across. Armed with that sketch, we went ahead and installed it. I had a host of volunteers, maybe 24 volunteers, and the idea with the demonstration was that for 2 blocks, we were going to try the 2 alternatives. On one side, try one alternative, on the other side, try the other, and really test out both, partly to let everybody experience what they felt like as pedestrians and as cyclists. So here you see everybody there putting in that bike lane. That's what the bike lane looked like. It looked pretty real. We were pretty proud of ourselves. And then that's the expanded pedestrian space. We used local materials. Those wine barrels were donated from a local vineyard, and we had a lot of fun with that process of sourcing resources from the community. Some more details. So that boardwalk that you see there was something the Downtown Association had, which was an excellent amenity to be able to put on the side, really expanded the sidewalk space. We actually brought out fire trucks. A very common concern with this type of installation is our emergency vehicle is going to be able to get through if we narrow the road. Well, we said, let's just bring the fire truck out. So we brought him out, we had him navigate and try all these things, and we were able to see what worked and what didn't. And then we had space for businesses to do parklets. We got a little parklet right there, some live music outside as well. So there was a lot going on, and it was a 2-day demonstration project. We collected feedback throughout the project on both sides of the road, asking people as they walked through downtown, what do you like, what do you not like? Would you like to see a longer test of this type of arrangement? And then based on that 48-hour outreach process, the city council voted to do a 6-month pilot. Now, the 6-month pilot of the alternative really would let them get data about traffic and economic development impacts. I mean, on 48 hours, you're not going to be able to completely tell how it would impact traffic. But, initially, even that 6-month trial felt really scary to people. And by doing it for 48 hours, we were able to kind of creatively think about it. And frankly, some of the items we learned from the 48-hour trial impacted the design for the 6-month pilot. So a very iterative process and true use of tactical urbanism. Now, that was city-led. That was not guerrilla whatsoever. Now, we definitely had, I want to say, the top-down Tactical urbanism, it's a cycle. Cities increasingly, a lot of the examples I'm going to show tonight are city-led. Cities all over the country are really trying to embrace this creativity and this iterative approach for a number of reasons, but sometimes it's bottom up, more guerrilla type initiative, but we really had the Downtown Association as a major leader here as well, so I think we had a lot of parties involved. Very important to tactical urbanism is the idea of build, measure, learn. I don't know if anyone's read The Lean Startup, but this idea of prototyping is very common in the tech industry. You don't spend your entire budget developing something without testing it. You're constantly testing it. You're constantly changing. Well, why don't we apply that to urban planning? I mean, we could. So that's sort of what tactical urbanism is about. And the tactical spectrum, like I said, sometimes initiatives begin as sanctioned city programs to experiment. Other times they begin in a totally DIY way. But what's interesting to me, having studied this a lot, is very often if an initiative began as a frustrated resident who went out and painted a crosswalk because they couldn't get the city to do it, actually often turns into a sanctioned effort, and there's many cities who have embraced that in a creative way. So I'm going to give an example of that. Tactical urbanism is definitely not necessarily new by any means. This is an art installation called Portable Parks 3, which was made in 1970 by a woman named Bonnie Ora Shirk, and she was making a comment about how we use our streets and public spaces by putting parks in unlikely locations in the Bay Area. Potentially inspired by that, I don't know, but this is maybe a more famous recent example, the early Parklet in San Francisco. This was by the art and design collective Rebar, and it wasn't totally illegal, but they really took advantage of a loophole. I mean, no one said you couldn't put a park in a parking spot if you paid the meter, but that's what they did. So that's a pretty classic tactical urbanist approach, is kind of big forgiveness rather than ask for permission, and really look for a loophole. So when they did that, did they necessarily know that this would become a very successful sanctioned city program? No. It was a part of a commentary about how we use streets and sidewalk spaces, but here we are in 2015, the city of San Francisco has put in 55 parklets or more through the Pavement to Parks program. So something that started off as unsanctioned or sort of active activism is now part of a very much admired city program. Put this up here because I'm going to talk in detail about a few more case studies now, but if you're interested in reading more, we've released 4 open source PDF guides on this topic. The first 2 guides highlight just case studies from all over North America of community groups and governments taking this approach. The third volume actually highlights South American, Latin American case studies, and it's in Spanish and Portuguese. And then the fourth is looking at Australia and New Zealand, what's being done there. And then recently, we actually have a real book now after prototyping this with free PDFs for a long time. So there it is. First, I'm going to talk about a project from Somerville, Massachusetts that really shows how a city is using tactical urbanism in public space planning. Somerville, right outside Boston. And Davis Square is a central area in the Somerville, kind of zone, and really had not been rethought for 2 decades. So the streetscape plan in 2012, when the city of Somerville was rethinking the area, was a big change for that intersection in that public space area. And because there were a lot of surface parking lots, they thought, a lot of surface parking lots and not enough public space. The city thought it might be interesting to try some plazas. Lots of cities around the country, New York City being a famous one, are taking over streets and parking lots to be plazas. So they thought this would be an interesting idea. They drew a very nice, pretty drawing, which us planners love to do, and then they put it out to the community, and the business owners were not very happy because, as is common in many contested spaces, I mean, we've already touched on it tonight. People are very afraid. My downtown is changing. You're taking away parking. I'm worried about how that's going to impact my business. Totally understandable. You're asking for a very big change. It's dramatic. So rather than give up on the idea, the city decided to take a tactical urbanism approach and try out the plaza for a weekend. So they advertised it. This was the existing condition. That's what it looked like. We went in. Really simple, just a couple tables, a couple tents, and started off with one food truck, set it up, and this guy showed up right away. Like, didn't take much. Seats, he's there. So people come out of the woodwork when you create good public space. So throughout the day and night of the days that it was installed, it was a very busy spot. We had people of all ages, people on bikes, just really engaging with the space. And it was interesting for the business owners who were worried about it to get to see what the foot traffic was like, how this could work, how this was working for them, and everybody got to experience it in a lower risk way. We had a vacant storefront space that we hosted a public meeting throughout. So we were constantly engaging people in talking to us about what was working, what wasn't working with the plaza. And then we collected, oh great, that's awesome. We collected suggestions as well from people on all of the tables. And what we heard at the end was that there was a really a high degree of support, even from folks who weren't sure at first, to try to make this plaza permanent. So definitely taking an iterative approach there. This is another one. This is much more of a traditional park example in Miami. So this is Biscayne Boulevard. It's a little bit of a weird angle, but it's 8 lanes of traffic, 4 in each direction. And as you can see, there's those high-rise buildings on the left side, right? So that's, it was a dense area, but just getting denser. There were a lot of large housing projects coming online in that zone. And across from the housing projects is this park zone, but it's pretty much impossible to cross a road like that. I mean, 8 lanes of traffic, it's very much a barrier to this important public amenity. And those parking lots weren't being very well used. So there was a large desire to see, what could be done about this. That was the existing condition. And then we transformed it for a week, a little longer this time, into what you see there. So one of those medians into about almost an acre, 3/4 or so acre park. This involved, getting out there with a lot of grass and sod and putting all that in. We did a lot of effort to collaborate with community groups around programming. I think this is very important too. You can't just create a space, but what we find a lot is it's the programming and the partnerships that make it. And I think what's so special often about these types of projects and these initiatives is that it forces people who may not have collaborated before to collaborate. Someone's giving a yoga class, someone else is, donating fitness equipment, and it really helps everybody in the community kind of rally around a vision and get to know each other better. So now they're actually looking at really a much more complete redesign of this road. It's called the Biscayne Green Plan, and this whole what seemingly crazy idea of taking one of those medians and turning it into a park is now really being integrated into the planning. So in that case, rather than having, like Somerville, they had a plan first and then they worked backwards to prototype it, here the prototype led to the plan. So what does this all say? To me, it's about getting it right for now, but having a strategic vision and just not, waiting. I mean, urban planning can be frustratingly slow, this, I think, tactical urbanism can really speak to that issue. I made the point earlier that cities around the country are embracing this, but one way that cities are starting to integrate iterative approaches and tactical urbanism into project delivery is through these plaza and parklet programs. So this is just a map in the United States of cities that I could find easily that, or this is also on the Pavement to Parks website in San Francisco, of places that have these programs, right, where they're actually formalizing that process. I know that parklets are also not new to San Mateo. This is from Innovation Week in 2014. It's exciting to be here, part of Innovation Week again, but there you go, parklet downtown. And as Marcus said, you've definitely experienced activation with food trucks before, so not new to this community, but I'm hoping some of these examples show you maybe how it could be pushed further and taken a little bit further. Pavement to Parks in San Francisco, yes, it's about parklets, but it's also, this is a newer project that I've done a lot of research on. So in the Soma neighborhood of San Francisco, which is a very industrial area, and in a scenario maybe where it wasn't appropriate to get rid of parking spaces, they've created a pilot plaza in an alley. So this has been a really interesting area for people to eat lunch, have music, all that kind of stuff in Annie Alley. Again, just another example, much more informal of closing down an alley at lunchtime, but doesn't always have to be part of a formalized program. People Street program in Los Angeles is an interesting one to look at quickly because it's different than San Francisco's. San Francisco has a very kind of open, wide design process. In Los Angeles, they have what I call a kit of parts model. It's much more regimented, so they have these 3 space types: plaza, parklet, bike corral. If you're going to make them, if you're going to be a business owner or a community benefit district that's going to sponsor such a space, you have to adhere to relatively strict guidelines. But it's a lot easier for the city to administer because it's just sort of, you've filled out my template, great, you're approved. So there's different approaches, and cities that are interested in this really must look around the country to see how different cities are doing it. The last point I'll make before I hand it over to Leah is that it's not just cities and community groups embracing this approach, but also developers. So, development projects, again, can take 2 years to have any real, open for business type activation for the general public. The Hall in San Francisco is an example. This is in Central Market, where this is a building that had not been activated for, I would say, over 10 years. And the process of building the planned project, which was a housing development with retail on the ground floor, was going to take maybe 2 years, rather than just have this be a boarded up commercial area, ground floor area for years to come. The developer decided to transform it into a pop-up food hall. So this is a little more permanent than a food truck rally, but it's still very informal. They're just these little stalls as sort of a communal eating space. Their target for the vendors that they included were folks who had not really had a brick and mortar restaurant before, so in that way they're serving as a bit of an incubator, giving people a chance to try out having a physical space, even with a lower barrier to entry. So that's been a really successful and really popular destination in San Francisco. Another example is the Yard. This is near the AT&T Stadium, so next time you go to a Giants game, you should check this out. But there's a large parking lot that, there's a longer term vision for development on this parking lot, but rather than let it stay for years, Gale Studio and others have worked on a project to do a very multifaceted retail beer garden type establishment. So with that, we'll both answer questions again at the end. That's good. Okay. Want me to click for you?
No, I think I got it. Thank you, though. Clicker. Thank you, Julie. Oh my gosh. Hello. I am Leah Nichols, and I'm from SiteLab Urban Studio, and we are an urban design firm based in San Francisco. So, quick question to start us off: who has heard of the Google bus protests? Lovely. So this is seemingly silly, but these protests actually symbolize this huge, great, drastic change and growing pains that currently San Francisco, as well as the Bay Area, is experiencing with the recent tech boom. And so there's so much neighborhood tension and obviously anti-tech sentiment expressed in this sidewalk art. And there's also a lot of development. So in other words, it's a very unique time and place to be in urban design. And we believe that our best bet, cities are asking for more community and more inclusiveness, and we believe that the best bet for this is public space. Public space is where it's at. It's where many different people can come together and run into each other and look up from their devices and engage with the surroundings. And because of this belief, we believe that design to us is about as much about people and program as it is about building big buildings. So these, that's not a good yellow, but these are a few of our recent projects in San Francisco, and they range in scale from multi-acre developments to a parklet, so that's 2 parking spaces. And we found that no matter the scale, like Julie mentioned quickly, the development process is extremely long, it's complicated, and it's slow, and as any planner in the room, it takes a lot of will and a lot of patience. And it's complicated because of this web. There are many factors involved in development, and there are many players. And they all kind of come together to form a thing in the end, which is a plan. I feel like I had something else to say about this. So because of this very complex web, it's important that we design developments incrementally with checkpoints along the way. And checkpoints, especially at the beginning phase, may include site research and outreach, but also lots of testing and lots of prototyping. And Julie just mentioned some really great examples of that. So tonight I'm going to highlight two of SiteLab's projects. One is called Pier 70 and one is called 5M. And I'm going to start with Pier 70. And this is right there. It's in southeast San Francisco, and it's along the waterfront on the bay side. And Pier 70 is actually the last undeveloped waterfront property in San Francisco. So this is a zoomed-in map of the site. It's a pretty large area. Unlike its name implies, it's not a single pier. We have lots of people thinking that. SiteLab is leading the urban design and master planning efforts with Forest City Development on the waterfront property, which is in light blue here. And it's about 28 acres. So the site in its heyday was full of workers during World War II, and it was also full of densely packed buildings for industrial uses, which was primarily shipbuilding. However, fast forward to today, and it is filled with lots of vacant land, crumbling buildings, and not so friendly barbed wire and chain link fences. So what was once in the 50s a very active site, but still not public, today is very inactive and still not public. So our vision for the site is to bring back the activity, make it active again, but also this time open it up to the public. And I'm going to go through quickly the key drivers of the plan, the thing. But first I want to point out our principles of place. And these are themes that we've synthesized from what the public has said and what we've gathered from outreach efforts. So people have said they're very proud of this industrial history that the site has. They've also described themselves as diverse and creative. And they've also said that they wanted the site to be more accessible and more open. So taking those factors into account, we created a site concept plan. So this is our site, the dashed line, that's the 28-acre waterfront site, and it is directly south of actually a still active ship repair site to the north. So taking into account the principles of place, we really wanted to retain the site history and the physical character of the industrial place. So we started by creating a node of these historic buildings, so warehouses that are already on the site. And these are some of the photos of the buildings. Their architects drool over this. I love them. There's a lot of beautiful textures and materiality currently there. Next, we wanted to respond to people's desire for accessibility and not only create new sufficient connections, but also really beef up what the existing connections are today. So that's like transit routes and bike lanes. So the original park, the Port Master Plan, was just a strip of green along the waterfront, but we really wanted to pull the park into the heart of the site, have it interact with the historic buildings, and really engage with the water and maximize views and access. And then another unique thing about Pier 70 is that there are a lot of artists there now, which is pretty cool. So we wanted to honor that existing use, and we're proposing a creative core district. So that's a lot of lower but dense buildings that spill out onto this park and they're very public facing. And then because there's ship repair to the north and there's a PG&E site to the south, we wanted to buffer all of this with office uses. So this is a larger concept plan that was developed with many different people, engineers, architects, landscape architects. But we didn't just do this alone. We did this in tandem, or while we did a 3-year effort collaborating with the community. So I'm going to talk about those now, but I first want to talk about how we start outreach. There's a couple questions we like to ask ourselves. One is, who do we talk to? So who is the community? There are many different stakeholders, from city agencies to neighborhood organizations to longtime workers who know this site better than anyone does. We also like to ask, who are we serving? So we're not only serving the people that are living there today, that are working there today, but we're also serving, because development is a very long process, we're also serving people that are going to be there 20 years from now, 50 years from now. And lastly, we ask ourselves, how do we talk to people? It's important to us to make the design process very open and accessible and engaging, and even fun. So we try to achieve all of this with different types of outreach. So for Pier 70, we kicked off the outreach process with traditional workshops and focus groups. This one was specifically asking people what the culture of their neighborhood is today and what they'd like to see change in the future, or perhaps stay the same. And this was another workshop where we kind of asked people to dream big about what they wanted to see at Pier 70. And it was called a dream storm, and of course the most popular answer was a beer garden. So we may or may not be currently designing a beer garden. So literally making your dreams come true. Another unique thing that we did with this outreach process was the developer hired a local artist. Her name's Wendy McNaughton. She's pretty much a local celebrity in San Francisco. But they hired her to conduct site research in a really new way. She does kind of this cool anthropological, unedited documentary style art with interviews. So they brought her on board to kind of get more voices to the table during the whole outreach process. And I'm going to click through some of her work, which is awesome. She covers history and conducts personal interviews, and then also does some shots of architecture. And yeah, it's just, that's pretty unique for a developer to bring an artist on board, and the collaboration wasn't just art that went in a gallery or went in the developer's office. We actually held a community event with this art piece, and invited the community and shared it with them. So in addition to that kind of outreach, we do a lot of outreach actually on the site. So this urban air market, which was about 1.5 years ago, was really exciting because it was our first event on the site at Pier 70. And it was really fun to kind of watch people stumble in, people that had never been there before, and discover the site. There are these huge abandoned warehouses. You're right by the water. There's really no place like it in San Francisco. So there was food, always brings people, arts and crafts, and of course a little urban design. So we took this market as an opportunity to present our initial concept plans to the public for the first time. It's important to get people excited and on board early on, and we find that events are incredibly great forums for feedback. We also held an open house, which was awesome and more focused on the open space for the plan. The landscape architect presented at this, and we had site tours as well. And on the site tours, we had big rendering images that we showed people along points during the tour to show people what it could look like, and got feedback that way as well. So quickly, this is the main historic building on site that we're retaining, Building 12. It's awesome, and it's hosting ongoing outreach efforts. So that's, I think this is the outside of it. So movie nights, if you happen to be in San Francisco, there's movie nights, there's dance parties, legal dance parties. I've heard there were some illegal ones in the 80s that were pretty great that I missed out on. And yeah, it's great to see people recognizing the site, have it on their radars, and becoming invested in it. And I think, so this is it today, and this is a rendering image, which is totally fake, but I kind of love that it doesn't look too dissimilar. There's people there, and yeah, it's active. So I'm gonna jump away from the waterfront and go smack dab into the middle of downtown San Francisco, 5M project. And 5M is unique because it's 4 acres of land in the middle of San Francisco, which is pretty rare. Okay, 5M. How are you guys doing? Okay. Woo! Thank you for that fist pump. That was helpful. Okay, so 5M is located at this hinge point in San Francisco. It's kind kind of, the blue indicates a more commercial-heavy downtown, and it's kind of meeting this more mixed-use south of Market District, or SoMa. And the concept for 5M is to marry those two areas and bring in the larger, dense downtown forms and meet that with this finer grain, active ground floor SoMa texture. The site is near tons of transit, so BART, Muni, bus routes, and the future Central Subway corridor right there. So it's an ideal place to build up and bring people and activate. So currently the site is about half parking lots, and most of the times there's about 2 cars parked there. So very underutilized. There's only one tenant and there's not much programming. So with programming in mind and people in mind, these are the 4 goals for the project: mix of uses, active ground floor, programmed open spaces, and diversity of building forms. So all of those kind of culminated into an actual plan and an actual plan. And this is it, but I'm going to be focusing on the open spaces and the ground floor. The site has 2 open spaces. One is, let's see if I can use this again. One is Mary Court, which is right here, and it's named because it's on Mary Street, and that's an at-grade, I think right now it's grass, so at-grade grassy open space. And then there's also a rooftop space on top of the Chronicle building. And then 2, like Julie mentioned exactly, open spaces aren't necessarily always just lawns at grade. They're also streets. So 5M has a lot of alleyways that we're trying to activate. And they can be activated in different ways. Here we're proposing benches and traffic calming measures. And what did I want to say about this one? And it's not, the public realm is not just about the public realm, it's also about what's inside the buildings. So for us, this project, it's really important to get an active ground floor. So that means having tenants inside the buildings that actually want to be more extroverted and spill out onto those alleyways and onto those open spaces. And this is a personal example of activating alleyways, just for proof. This is me and some coworkers dancing in Annie Alley, which Julie mentioned. And this is a typical Friday, I'd say, in Annie Alley. There's usually a singer there. There's people eating lunch, and there is sometimes dancing. So it's pretty magical. And if there's no dancing, the singer will just go right up to you and ask you what you're eating for lunch. So it's a great example of an alley. Also art. Art is great for activating spaces in the public realm. Art kind of changes the way you think and changes the way you perceive things. For example, 2 buildings squishing a huge red ball. You don't see that every day. And yet, there's something to be said about the element of surprise and delight, even in the public realm. So that's kind of the public realm strategy. The project also wanted to partner with lots of community tenants, and specifically tenants that were already community anchors. So they partnered with Tech Shop. If you guys have heard of Tech Shop, it's a making and prototyping facility that's open to the public. They also partnered with Impact Hub, which is a co-working space, and they focus on social impact. And they partnered with many others. Another notable one is Intersection for the Arts, which is a very well-established small local arts organization. So they brought these guys on board, not only to basically help activate the space, and also kind of demanding from them that they be extroverted tenants and be in the community and be hosting events and not just sealed up in their buildings. So this is one of those events. It was called the 5 Ws, and it was done in partnership with Intersection for the Arts. And there were 5 art installations installed around the site. And this is one of them. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of alleyways in this site. Hardly anyone's ever in them. And so we installed these chalkboards as one of the installations. And if anything, it just made people curious. Like a lot of people wrote on the chalkboards, but if anything, it kind of drew people in a non-creepy way to see what's going on. This is another outreach effort. So this tunnel is currently on site, and it's perceived as scary and very cave-like, and hardly anyone walks through it. So we brought some food trucks around, and now hundreds of people go to this tunnel actually for lunch every week. They have delicious food and sometimes music. And then this is the last prototype I'm going to talk about. This was the Urban Prototyping Festival in 2012, and it was a two-day event just to get people out. We asked ourselves, what happens if we relax the permits and relax the process and just do it? So this presented, or allowed people to present some crazy awesome ideas on the fly. And these are a couple of them. Musical hopscotch, and then the right, I love, called the PP planter because it's weird but also genius. It's a urinal / planter box. It works. So for 5M, we've been working really hard to make these strong linkages with the community, with on-site activities, and more traditional outreach. So this is the vision for phase 2, which is a mixed-use development, same site, and showing different ways to activate the ground floor. So here we have open storefronts and a green wall and some street art, which I love. So in conclusion, unicorns, naturally. But no, in conclusion, public art is awesome. It inspires creativity and allows us to make complex collaborations, and most importantly, makes room for the unexpected. So, thank you.